guest today is Frank Mong, the COO of Nova Labs. Helium is the first decentralized wireless network using crypto to incentivize users. Frank, thanks for joining me today. Welcome to the Blockchain Show.
Ethan, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
If you wouldn't mind introducing yourself a little bit to the audience, since it's your first time on the show.
Thank you, Ethan. Frank Mong, COO of Nova Labs, formerly known as Helium Inc. We recently changed our name from Helium to Nova for the sake of just giving credit to the community that's really built this massive network around the world via the crypto and mining the crypto HNT. And so part of our transition and part of our evolution has always been to kickstart the movement, the technology, give it all away, including the name. And so we're at that point in our life cycle where we felt it was appropriate that the Helium name was gifted to the open source group. It's governed and it's custodied by the Helium Foundation, which is a separate entity. And the original creators of the network and the creators of the tech from Helium are now under Nova Labs. We're still here supporting the ecosystem, supporting the technology and the crypto and the blockchain, but also focused on building applications on top and furthering the utility and usage of our crypto. And so that's always been a part of our plan and strategy. We just didn't know when it was the appropriate time, and so we felt like this is the right time to make that transition. But we're super excited about what's ahead of us.
Yeah, so we've been going at this podcast since 2016. Saw a lot of pretty cool projects come and go. Yours definitely seemed unique, and I don't know if this is true, but I heard something that you also co-founded one of the first decentralized media companies. Is there any truth to that?
Not me. That's Sean Fanning. So Sean Fanning is the founder of Napster, and Napster, I would argue, is probably the technology in the app that completely changed the music industry, moving music from CDs and tape to a digital media, MP3s. It's probably before your time, but there was a time when you couldn't listen to music without something called a CD. You needed a CD player, like a Sony Walkman or Sony Discman or something like that. And Sean Fanning, one of the co-founders of Helium, he founded Napster, and that completely changed how we listen to music today. Like you and I use iTunes or Spotify. I mean, there's all kinds of services out there that's available. And I think it's all thanks to Sean Fanning and his really just amazing vision, but also the tenacity to actually go attack and change a complete entire industry. That's really cool. And that's not me. I wish it was me.
Oh,
but
I'm sorry.
I'm not that guy. It's okay. No, it's a great story actually to tell folks, because it's important, because that's the roots of where Helium comes from, is trying to solve problems. Really, Sean had a problem he was trying to solve, and that was to share music that he loved with the world. And in doing so, he, I think, as a side effect, created an entire movement towards digital music. Now monetized by large companies, and we all love the convenience of that, of course, as a result. And for Helium, it's similar in that Sean and Amir Halim, the co-founder CEO of Helium, now known as Nova Labs, our objective has always been to create a network to connect everything in a very open, in this case, open standards, open source manner, in a very low cost manner. That's inclusive of not just everyone, but also everything. So that's the word, like Internet of Things. It's really sensors. It's little robots, or little air quality sensors or tracking sensors. Those things don't have a means to connect through cellular because it's too expensive and it's too power hungry. So we had to come up with another way. And fortunately, unfortunately, it was to create an entire network around the world. And the power of crypto really showcases itself here is to solving a specific problem and using a very unique incentive model around crypto to do that and drive behavior to create that network together, decentralized, completely autonomous of a single entity, but able to maintain trust and order through a ledger. And that's sort of what's unique about Helium.
Yeah. Maybe give us a little bit more, a little more information on some of those problems specifically that you're trying to solve, because I know that we're talking, wireless hotspots, and I'm kind of curious how crypto ties into that. If you wouldn't mind expanding a little
Yeah,
bit.
yeah. I think it's probably good context for your listeners to understand that as a company we've been at this since 2013. So we're not like a young startup born out of crypto like a lot of the NFT companies that you hear about. We've been around for a long time, and the group of us in our background is really from the wireless technology world or cybersecurity world or distributed systems world. And that culmination really, I think, drove us together. But the problem of figuring out how to build a global network and sort of even the audacity of having that kind of mission could not be done without the element of crypto. And that was the key that unlocked everything, I would say. Like from 2013 to 2017, when I joined, the focus of the company was purely on wireless tech, everything wireless that you can imagine. And really working through and gaining expertise there, trying to figure out how to build a network, applications that could use a network. That was something that the company focused on. And then 2017 hit, and if you recall, and your audience definitely would know this, Bitcoin and like Ethereum became like household words. Like you saw it on like CNBC, you saw it on CNN, the news outlets are talking about it. That was like the whole ICO scene in 2017. And as a group at Helium, we were sitting around going, well, what are we going to do? How do we even build a massive network? And it was funny because the engineers at the company at the time, there was only like 12 employees or something like that at the time, sat around with a bottle of Oban 14, which is the whiskey. And through sort of one of the jam sessions, like brainstorming sessions, while drinking some whiskey, one of the engineers said, what if we could put Bitcoin into a consumer hotspot that shared its wireless signal with anyone, and you would earn Bitcoin for doing so? Like, could that help us build a global network? And we were like, oh wow, that's a great idea, but what's Bitcoin? Literally in 2017, I certainly didn't know what Bitcoin was. I've heard of it like everyone else, saw the news, but couldn't explain to you what it meant. And so we started really going down a rabbit hole and researching. And finally, after looking at like, different layer ones at the time, I think like, Ethereum and Stellar and so forth, Amir Haleem, our CEO and co-founder, he read this white paper called Filecoin, and it inspired him and inspired the engineers. Like, you know what, we're inspired because they were doing a distributed systems around storage and sort of creating a decentralized storage capability. And we thought, well, what if we wrote our own layer one, our own blockchain with the primitives that allowed us to prove coverage, like proof of coverage. And so our entire blockchain is based off of this concept of proof of coverage. Well, then we need to have a blockchain and primitives that allowed individual hotspots around the world to be able to communicate via wireless as well as the internet to prove itself. Like, hey, I'm here. I'm, somewhere in, Chicago, and I'm on this, north side or in the south side, and I'm providing coverage. Well, how are we supposed to know that? Like, how does the blockchain know that, right? So we had to come up with the technology so that the proof of work here, which is proof of coverage, could work disparately, individually, and anonymously, but prove itself constantly. And the reward for proving yourself constantly in the way we created this incentive model is around proof of coverage, and that allowed you to mine the cryptocurrency HNT. But we want the network to be useful as well. So if you're a hotspot that's mining HNT, the more data you help transmit, meaning the more sharing you're doing, the more mining you would do as well. So there were sort of two ways to mine, right? In the beginning, we thought, well, this is new, so there'll be very little usage because people don't know about it and there's no network. Let's incentivize the creation of networks. And so the proof of coverage that the Helium blockchain focuses on is incentivizing creation of new wireless coverage, not where there's lots of coverage, like in Manhattan, but outside of Manhattan, upstate New York, or down in Pennsylvania, or in the rural areas of California, where there's less coverage. Incentivize people to go there and help us build a wireless coverage in that area. And that's how the blockchain functions, is that it rewards you for creating wireless coverage in areas that do not already have tons of coverage. That's one. And the other is usage. Like if there's lots of things using your network, then you mine more because we want this to be useful. And so those are sort of the high level concepts that we coded into the blockchain. And that's how we started. And that's what gave birth to like the Helium blockchain and how it works today. The actual, utility and usefulness is creating new wireless coverage and transmitting and sharing your internet so that other things or other people can use your internet. And those two pieces are key outcomes here. But the side effect is that you mine something called HNT as a cryptocurrency. And then that HNT, is what it is. It is actually very useful in that for you to use the network, you have to burn HNT out of circulation, which creates something called a data credit. And the data credit's what's used on the network. And that system is called the burn and mint equilibrium. That was created by the multi-coin capital guys, Tushar John and his team. Really helped us with that. But that economic model there, that incentive model, created an ecosystem that allowed devices to use the network very cheaply, called data credits, kind of like a stable coin. If it's, some people don't understand, it's pegged to like a fraction of a penny. And then HNT is traded in the secondary market. So HNT can fluctuate, but the number of data credits you get is dependent on the pricing of HNT, but it doesn't affect the cost. The cost is set. The cost is fixed. It's just a number of units that you get changes. So if HNT is worth $1, you get 10,000 data credits. When you take away one HNT, you get 10,000 data credits. If HNT is at $10, you get 100,000 data credits, something like that. So that's the ratio. But that was important because for us, there are users of the network that really need predictable costs because they want to use this and they don't want to deal with fluctuation of secondary speculation. That gave them stability. Data credits, stable, easy to predict cost. You can use it only on the network, not tradable. And then the token, the crypto HNT itself, that's on the secondary, and it is what it is based on whatever rationale.
Are we talking, voice and data, or is this mainly just so people can access internet? And then second question would be, if somebody isn't, mining the token and they want to use the network, do they go through an exchange to get tokens to make it work, or?
Yeah, so a couple parts. First, let me answer the question of like what uses the network today, what's going to use the network moving forward, and then we'll talk about how do you actually get to data credits, how accessible is that. So what uses the network today? And the network is at about 750,000 plus hotspots around the world. I think we're across 55,000 plus cities, 170 countries. It's growing very rapidly, but the number that I am most amazed with is I think we add like 30 to 50 cities a month to the list, which is amazing, like new cities with coverage. And that's what you want to see. You want to see new coverage. That's where the rewards really I think, focus on. The network today supports Internet of Things, little sensors. So not necessarily you and me and our iPhones or Android. It's for little sensors. So typical applications that use the network today are anything from supply chain tracking and tracing, and that could be bicycles and scooters and skateboards, to dogs and cats with collars, to water management and air quality. So when I say water management, I'm talking about like water meters that meter your home for water usage, or water leak detection systems. Managing water leaks and water use is actually probably the most valuable use case for like the home insurance industry, because water is what destroys most homes. Like a little leak can wipe you out, And so, but also water's super precious. We're like running out of water, and so you want to be efficient with how we use that. So those applications are probably the most, I would say, popular and the most important ones that's on the network today. And that's little sensors sending little bits of data. We're talking 24 bytes per packet, and they pay, a fraction of a penny for sending each packet. And that's the utility of the network today. Where it's going is to 5G. And so we've got partners in our ecosystem, like companies like Freedom Fi that was recently backed by Qualcomm, and companies like Bicells and Sercom, Rack Wireless. You've got companies that are using open source stacks and adding the Helium blockchain and the crypto to their open source stack to create an entire stack to support 5G and enabling individuals to become cell towers, essentially. Like you can turn your home into a cell tower. That movement, I think, is a direct result of the success we're seeing with the current network. And there's about 20,000 of those, 5G Helium mining hotspots out there in the world already. So that's kind of cool to see. And that's for your iPad, for your iPhone, for your Android. And you use it's primarily data. And you would use that for like whatever, like Skype calls, or I can't believe I said that. Sorry, you might want to edit that out. I can't even believe I said Skype. I meant Signal calls. or FaceTime. All right. And text messaging certainly, but you can use it for your Netflix or your YouTube and TikTok browsing. That's coming. Like, that's sort of like this new wave of applications on top of the H&T crypto. And I think to answer your last part of that, which is how do you actually get the data credits, right? So if you're using the network, how do you get the data credits? We made it as simple as possible. Like if you're mining H&T today, you can literally sell someone data credits from your app, just from your wallet. There's a way to convert it over. And so you can, as a user of the network, you can go to an individual by individual basis who are miners. You can go get data credits from them. Or you can use the open source stack called Helium Console, and that's available for anyone. It's free. And in that console stack, you can buy data credits, and console will burn H&T for you to convert them to data credits. So the tooling is there. It's command line. You can use command line on the blockchain, burn H&T and mint data credits. So there's a number of ways to do it depending on your level of expertise or the level of pain you want to experience. But we try to make it as consumer friendly as possible in different degrees of, consumer friendliness.
Yeah. Wow. That's really interesting. So like right now, the large part of the network is focused on, Internet of Things, connected devices. And then on top of that, you're kind of also adding in this new 5G data service.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can imagine, like, what we've discovered is the Helium blockchain and the crypto incentive can power creation of wireless networks of all kinds. We started with IoT. The movement now is towards 5G. Wi-Fi certainly is going to be there. We have ecosystem, partners or people in our ecosystem taking our code, because everything's open source and free. They're just building it into Wi-Fi. So that it's almost like it's the possibilities are endless. Like could be whatever. Like if next year there's a spec for 10G, then you could use the Helium blockchain to support 10G proliferation if you wanted to, leveraging consumers and individuals. And so I think that's the power of what I would consider, an economic model that makes sense. Because if you look at the traditional way of building wireless networks, it's incredibly expensive for one entity, whether it's like your cable provider or your satellite provider, your cell phone provider. Like it's so expensive to build infrastructure. It costs billions of dollars because you have to go through so many hoops along the chain of building cell towers, right? There's real estate, there's power, there's leases, there's like city, county, state, federal guidelines of all kinds. And if you think about it, it's like just barrier after barrier, and that just adds costs. And so you like wonder, well, why do we pay like $100 for a cell plan? Well, because it costs a lot of money. It's many billions. What if all that went away? What if like you didn't have those barriers? If you and I and anyone, our families and friends and our networks could just stand up our own little consumer-based cell tower that took us like 3 minutes to set up with a little app, dude, why not? Now you don't have to depend on one entity. You can offload that across the entirety of like global citizens. We can all do it and we will all be rewarded. But at the same time, cell phone providers wouldn't have to carry that cost burden. So I see it as like a pretty ingenious way of building like the true future of Web3, if you think about it, where the infrastructure is decentralized.
Yeah, man, that's so cool.
Yeah.
It brings up so many questions.
Yeah.
Because here where I live, it's frustrating because there's one internet service provider.
Yeah.
And that's it. If I lived closer to the city, then I'd have more options like, fiber optic internet.
Sure.
And what's really frustrating is they run fiber optics right up to the street, like a couple 100 feet from here. And then they terminate it. And then it's coax.
That's right.
And they had it open one day when I was walking by and I was just talking to the technician and I said, why don't you guys just run fiber optic to the neighborhood?
To the homes.
It's like the cost of going under the streets is too much. They don't want to mess with it. And it's like, for years I'm like, there's got to be a better way to get faster internet that doesn't cost so much. So,
you can't blame them, right? It's like if they had to trench, they need permits, they need equipment, they got to pay the union. There's liability costs. Like there's a bunch of, the list goes on and on and on. And so you can imagine that just that trench to your home, to like your house, physically to your house, would cost $20,000, probably $20,000 per house, right? And you're talking about a small-ish neighborhood, probably. How are they going to make their money back? Like they could do it, but what's their return on investment for doing that, right? It would take them like decades, maybe never, to get that back, right? So from a business perspective, it doesn't make any sense for them to do that. It's not their fault. It just doesn't make sense. But it makes complete sense for us to do it on our own. So imagine like if you're out in a rural area and you're like, well, I've got some neighbors. They're just like spread out, right? But I have neighbors, right? And we want the benefits of high-speed internet. Who doesn't? So how could we share with each other? And a great way could be in that particular use case where you're in a rural environment, it doesn't make sense for your ISP to like bring in cable or fiber because you're too far out. Can't blame them. That makes complete sense for them not to do it. Income satellite options, right? Starlink is a great idea. Well, how do we leverage the Starlink in a more affordable way? It would be, let's get Starlink into one home and then let's share it right across the neighborhood. And if you could do that, then that Starlink becomes very viable and it becomes a great alternative that makes sense. And if you had an ability to mine crypto with that, like HNT, then you could get, your cost basis back someday. Like it's not like it's going to be a fixed cost forever. Like you can actually share with others And as a result of sharing with your neighbors, you would earn a reward back that helps you offload that cost. That, I think that's manageable. And that, think of that as like a localized micro network, right? Like a localized network, I think makes complete sense. And then you become this like distributed ISP almost. Like, Ethan, you could become an ISP owner.
Yeah.
And your neighbors would just use your backhaul, right? And that's just how I think this should go. It's funny because this is how it was back in like the late 80s, when you had a bunch of different ISPs like CompuServe and AOL and, gosh, Net Zero or something, like all these like different ISPs. I mean, this could be like, it's like a reset. You go back to like this decentralized approach with quality, high bandwidth, because this crypto incentive works.
Yeah, man, that's fascinating. I'm wondering how difficult that would be to get some of my neighbors on board. So maybe we should expand on that because
Yeah,
let's talk about the hotspots. Is there equipment people need to
sure.
buy to set up the hotspot? And then, what are some
Yeah.
barriers to teaching people about, the token, and maybe
Yeah.
walk me
So
through that.
sure. So today, the IoT component, like the IoT hotspots that support an IoT network, super easy. It's a mining hotspot. It uses 5 watts of power, super low, low cost on power there. The device itself, I think, are coming down in prices, which is great. It's much more accessible. So it's under $500 now per H&T mining gateway. And that's easy. There's an app that comes with that. Literally 2 minutes, you're done. Super easy. That's like, if you don't want to get into it, like there's some prosumer types that really get into it and go outdoors, set up antennas. Amazing, right? And that's a little bit more effort. You need a ladder and probably like a drill and some know-how. Don't like fall off the roof. I would never recommend that. So make sure you're safe. But some people do it. They get up there and they put antennas on their roofs, which is great for them. They mine more crypto. That's easy. That's been streamlined. The UX and UI, the user experience and the user interface, clean, simple. Anyone can do it. Like your mom and dad could do this. Super simple. When you get into the 5G world, it's not there yet. It's still fairly complicated. It's not one box, but there's like a box that's called the gateway, the 5G gateway. And then there's like on top of that, a radio. And the radio is the actual 5G cellular radio. And there's different types. There's like indoor radios, outdoor radios. And you have to decide sort of like what level of effort you want to put into it. Of course, if you could put a 5G radio outdoors, and you can have not one, but like multiple, like 3, you can get omnidirections. You can reach more people. So you can get sort of level of difficulty here, right? Instead of just putting one in your home. So that part, I think, the ecosystem is putting more work into to refining, take it from like 2 pieces into 1 piece and, making it optional, to go on the roof and all that, make it easier. And then on the app side, there's more work that has to be done on the app side as well. I think there's been a lot of innovation there where most consumers can do it. It just takes following directions. It's going to take more than 3 minutes. But we believe at Nova Labs and Helium, like we believe that we got to make everything in crypto consumer grade. It's got to be super easy. And so that's not there yet. We're working on that to make it, super easy, consumer grade. But that's the effort that we're working on today. So I would say it's work in progress as a whole, but it'll get there. And as soon as it gets to that sort of like it's 3 minutes to install, you'll see everyone doing it. And now the question becomes, how hard is it to go entice your neighbors to join you, right? How hard is it to explain these things? I would say it's kind of like explaining Airbnb,
Mm-hmm.
like before Airbnb, what do we have? We had to go get hotels, right? There was no other option. Go check in at some Starwood Hotel or something. But today, gosh, I don't know. Most of my friends all use Airbnb for everything. They don't check into hotels anymore if they didn't have to. And so it's kind of like that. And if we can create a platform like that where it's Airbnb like, where you could just use that platform and that just kind of brings you customers to share your network, how cool would that be?
Yeah. No, yeah, it is really cool.
Right. So the effort for you is much lower, right? Easy install, right? Few minutes, get a thing up and running. If you want to earn more and get more coverage, get on the roof somehow or hire a professional to do it. Don't, no one should kill themselves doing that. Right. And then imagine there's this platform kind of like Airbnb or like Uber, where users of the network we just bring them to you. You just show that they just show up. That would be awesome.
I found a website. It's like an antenna searcher, and just kind of curious
Oh,
where all the, different antennas and cell towers are in my area. This was when 5G was just starting to get rolled out here, and I saw a bunch, man, because there was, there's like schools around and stuff, and on water towers, on, I knew someone who's pretty knowledgeable, in installing and that sort of thing. And he was telling me, yeah, like even if like a maintenance facility has, radio at certain, certain, I don't know, power wattage or whatever it would be, they have to register. And I was seeing like so many different antennas that I didn't know were there that were not, the private basically. So I'm wondering if, if someone who was to set up something on their roof, would they have to, like, do you have to file with the, like, I don't even know what, FCC or something, if because, or
yeah.
is there more freedom than that?
Yeah, that's a great point you bring up. With the spectrum we're using is called CBRS 5G, which is an unlicensed spectrum provided by the FCC. That's wonderful, by the way, because and we're the first country, United States is the first country to have that spectrum allocated for public use. In all other countries today, it's licensed spectrum, which means you have to buy it from the government. That CBRS spectrum, which stands for Citizens Band Radio Service or Citizens Band Radio Spectrum, something like that, CBRS. It's incredible because what that allows you to do is allows you to operate in those unlicensed spectrum bands if you follow the rules correctly. So the key here is just to follow the rules. And so the software that the community is writing as part of the open source stack, that solves for a lot of the, make sure you follow the rules of the FCC and stuff. That's all taken care of. And so as a consumer, if you're interested in doing this, the software stack in the back end is taking care of a lot of that work for you. You don't have to do anything. Literally, how this should work for anyone that wants to mine HNT by providing CBRS 5G is plugging it in, use an app to onboard it to the blockchain, which should take a few minutes, and then you're done. Registering on some website that looks like Airbnb for ISPs or something, and then you're done. Off you go, off to the races. That's how easy it should be.
Yeah, that's so cool, man. But somebody that would like to provide that service,
Yeah,
they need a pretty decent internet connection, I would assume, to begin with, right?
yeah,
And then it's getting converted to wireless from there.
yeah, yeah. I would say it's like Starlink is great. I mean, if you can get your hands on a Starlink satellite, get an account. What is that, like 200 megs download or something, and like 100 megs up, maybe something. I don't have the stats, by the way. Don't quote me on that. I think that's enough. That's sufficient. So again, it depends on the capacity, right? It just depends on what everyone's using, how much they're using it, how often, and if it's simultaneous. So it just depends.
I love it, man, because I think about. I mean, obviously, I've got a family. We're using the internet a lot, but there's a lot of
Yeah,
times of the day where we're not using it and we're still paying for that service. So, like, just
exactly.
the ability to share it it's really
Yeah,
cool, and it almost reminds me, like, when we were talking about decentralized music back in the day. It was such a
yeah,
sharing economy. It was
yeah,
so, just the before it was made illegal, and then the guilt started hitting me. Um, like Metallica crying about it, but like, there's different people from all around the world. We're sharing music. We're we're not listening to it all the time. It's just a file, and we can, the ethics is a whole different deal. But
this is different. I would
yeah,
say this is there's an analogy here, but I would say this is very different from music sharing or copyright, movie sharing.
Yeah, sorry,
This
I
is
didn't
about
mean
capacity.
to go
No,
there.
it's
I was
okay. I'm glad
reaching.
you brought it up. No, that's okay. I'm glad you brought it up because this isn't the same in that those are copyrighted materials and the work that was produced by the artist, they deserve the credit for that work. So I get where the rub is on that. Here it's different. You pay for broadband, you pay for internet service, and you have either capped capacity or uncapped capacity depending on your plan. You pay for it regardless of whether you use it or not. That's a different proposition, right? You should be able to use that internet for whatever it is that you want to use it for. In fact, we're recording a podcast right now. You're using it for that. You monetize the podcast. That's a business. You're a small business using the internet for small business usage. Nothing wrong with that. You should be able to do that. But if you wanted to share your overcapacity with your neighbor, it's no different. Why is that a problem? If your neighbor wants to watch YouTube on your internet, it's like your friend coming over to your house and playing Xbox. Is that a problem? No.
No.
Right? Or your friend coming on to your home and selling something on, eBay or whatever auction site. Is that a problem? No, it's not a problem. Of course they can do that. So I think it's a mindset change. Now, what I think the whole Napster thing did in the music industry, it just changed the mindset for people. Like every time these innovations happen, it just changes public mindset. Like Uber and Lyft with rideshare, dude, that completely changed like our mindset with like getting into strangers' cars. Remember when we were growing up, what did our parents tell us? Never talk to strangers and never get into their cars. And what do we do today? We go on an app, we find a stranger, and we get into the stranger's car. It completely changed the mindset, right? Like societal mindset changed. And now we're going to strangers' homes and we're paying them to sleep there with Airbnb. Like that's completely not what our parents taught us to do. Right?
Yeah.
And so I just feel like these are just systematic changes with mindset of society. And I think crypto is doing the same, just changing the mindset of society on, hey, things don't always have to be the same. In fact, change could be better, especially if we're always evolving and situations changing. In this case, crypto could be a great incentive for everyone, not just us individuals, but even for the incumbents to figure out how to build wireless networks in a more efficient and better way. So I think in this case, we're providing a piece of technology that can only happen because of crypto. And that's, it's pretty powerful. It's a really incredible use case that I think most people understand because it's so visceral. Like we all need it. We all want internet. It's so addictive. It's purely integrated into our lives now, right? And I think bottom line is not everyone has it. Not everyone has access to it. And it doesn't, to me, that feels wrong. Like, why is that? The thing that makes me feel guilty is the fact that we have it, you and I, but there are billions of people that don't for a number of reasons. And the biggest reason is because they can't afford it. And because they can't afford it, a single entity isn't going to invest to go do it. And our proposition should be, hey, you know what? A single entity should not be carrying that burden. We should do it together, all of us.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. A lot of good things there. I see this as a really good way to provide internet to people that otherwise, it would be hard to get a hold of. I mean, sure, you can go to Starbucks but it's not always feasible, but like, are you, I think I saw something about San Jose, like you guys were providing or helping people get online.
Yeah. I mean, city of San Jose in California, the heart of Silicon Valley, during COVID, realized that the 90,000 people in their community that do not have internet became a massive problem. Not just because it wasn't economically fair that they couldn't have access. It was that their children stuck at home couldn't get schooling. They couldn't get Zoom school because they didn't have internet access. So I think that highlighted the disparity of socioeconomic divide and the technology divide there. And so the city of San Jose decided to try something completely different out of necessity to solve that problem so that folks that could not afford internet access can afford it. And to pay for that, instead of the city trying to find the funds to pay for it, they decided to use Helium hotspots as a way to mine cryptocurrency and use the cryptocurrency to offset the cost of internet. And that's a completely innovative way of thinking about using Helium. And it's a really interesting idea that's almost like internet and technology access using UBI in a way. And so I think the city just very ingenious of them to come up with that kind of idea to serve its population. And now you've got we've got lots of cities around the country talking to San Jose, and even cities overseas, international markets, talking to them about how to leverage that same method and what they did to get it through public discourse, public approval, which San Jose did, right? Got approval from everyone and figured out how to manage that entire process, which is amazing. I never thought of that, but that's what I think this thinking differently does for us, is when you start to think differently about how things could be done. And even for a city, which is difficult to do, to get everyone to agree on something, this was clearly a unifying, situation where they believe like every kid deserves to be educated, especially in the public school system. And if you can't teach them in person, you can only do it virtually. You got to give the kid a way to get there virtually.
So I really like what you said about the mind shift change, and a lot of times with technology, it takes a while, but adding in the blockchain element, it has all these new use cases that, even that one that you just mentioned, that I'm sure you guys didn't foresee that. And
of course not.
Yeah, it's really cool, man. I want to thank you for coming on and sharing this with me. I know we're kind of getting past time here, but if there's anything you'd like to leave us with, or maybe where people can go to learn more and get involved, even, please feel free.
Sure. Yeah, Ethan, thank you for just taking the time to learn about Helium and giving your audience a chance to hear about how we're trying to do our part to improve internet connectivity and access for everyone and everything. If folks are interested and they want to get involved, I highly encourage them to go to helium.com. That's a great place to start. Join our community. Most of our community, I would say, is on Discord. A lot of the technical folks are on Discord. So if you're interested in that aspect of what we're doing, go to discord.gg/helium. That's our Discord server, and it's open to all. There's about 170,000 people there already, I think, which is great. We're also on Reddit. There's a bunch of folks on Reddit. There's like over 90,000 people on Reddit. So you can check out, read all the stuff on there, both love and hate, of course, on Reddit. And of course, we're all over social media, on YouTube, TikTok. Just search Helium, #Helium or #HNT. I don't know. There's like a few million videos out there on us already. So it's pretty cool to see the community getting involved. And, we're really fortunate. We're a small team, but we're very fortunate to have our community support us, and, folks building out the network as well as building out the, use cases and using the network. Both are incredibly important for the future of this movement. So, I just want to thank everyone that supported us and that stayed with us. We're continuing to innovate. We're trying our best,
Yeah, man. Well, you guys are doing great work. I want to thanks again, man. It's a real pleasure talking to you. I wish you all the best.
Thank you. I appreciate it.